In 1991, Kevin Costner starred as Robin Hood in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, a big movie for its time that was a fun, adventurous, swashbuckling take on the old Robin Hood legend. Be that a modern Hollywoodized version, but still loads of fun nevertheless. In this version, we see Robin Hood return to England after taking part in the Crusades, where he and his travelling companion, Azim, played by Morgan Freeman, have discovered that Robin Hood's father has been killed, and that the Sheriff of Nottingham is now ruling England with his cruel and sinister ways, played with evil delight by Alan Rickman, who totally steals the show, by the way. Robin Hood and other outlaws seek refuge in Sherwood Forest, where they build up an army so they can fight back and take down the evil Sheriff of Nottingham once and for all, as well as stopping the evil ruler from marrying Maid Marian in this energetic medieval-themed action movie. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves was my introduction to the Robin Hood legend. And once again, although it's not historically accurate, it's still a very enjoyable movie, and a standout movie from my childhood. So with that, 10 things that you didn't know about Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Number 10. Modernising the Robin Hood image. Robin Hood was directed by Kevin Reynolds, who had previously worked with Kevin Costner on the movie Fandango. And when he got Costner on board to play Robin Hood, they both agreed that the classic traditional look of Robin Hood needed to be ditched, as a 90s version of the character just wouldn't look right in green tights, especially considering this was a more brutal, gritty retelling of the story. So instead of Robin Hood's classic attire, they went for a more rugged medieval look, while still looking swashbuckling. And Hood's iconic forest hat was replaced with a Kevin Costner mullet. However, there was a famous incident in which the crew pulled a prank on Costner by leaving a pair of green tights in his trailer, leading him to believe that they were part of his actual costume for the movie. But yeah, thankfully that was just a joke. And Costner and Reynolds would go on to make the infamous science fiction movie Waterworld a few years later. But that's a story for another time. Number 9. Filming locations. Despite being an American production with Warner Brothers, pretty much all of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves was filmed in England, including Wardour Castle in Wiltshire, Burnham Beeches in Buckinghamshire, Holme Priory in Northumberland, Asgar Falls in Yorkshire, and the Seven Sisters Chalk Cliffs in Sussex. Some scenes involving the Sheriff of Nottingham's castle was filmed in France, and other interior shots were filmed at Shepperton Studios in Surrey. What I find interesting about the filming is round about the time Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves was being filmed, a British children's TV show called Maid Marian and Her Merry Men was also being filmed, which was basically a spoof of the Robin Hood legend. In fact, British actor Howard Lew Lewis, who played one of the Merry Men in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, also played one of the Merry Men in Maid Marian and Her Merry Men, which is weird. Number 8. Creative changes. The original script for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves had some differences that weren't in the final film. For example, the Will Scarlet character, who was played by Christian Slater, wasn't going to end up being Hood's brother, along with his character meeting a grisly end at the hands of the Sheriff of Nottingham. Yep, his character gets killed off. There was a subplot where Fanny, the wife of John Little, starts a revolution in the Nottingham Castle's kitchen, causing the kitchen workers to revolt, which results in a chef comically getting covered in cake. Robin Hood's trusty ally, Azim, who was played by Morgan Freeman as mentioned, was originally called Aslan, not to be confused with Aslan. Alan Rickman said he did not like the dialogue of his character, so he rewrote a lot of his dialogue with the help of comedian Ruby Wax and playwright Peter Barnes, and the rewrites took place at a Pizza Express, of all places. Robin Wright was originally cast as Maid Marian, which would have made sense as she previously starred as a similar medieval princess role in The Princess Bride. However, the part had to be recast as Wright fell pregnant, so actress Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio was cast as her replacement, who to me I'll always remember as being Tony Montana's sister from Scarface. And to give credit where credit's due, she actually does a pretty damn good English accent. However, yeah, the same can't be said about Costner. Look, there's no getting around it has to be addressed. Number 7. The Accent Dilemma. One thing that Robin Hood Prince of Thieves often gets criticised for is Kevin Costner's accent, as he is meant to be playing a traditional English character, and yet his accent is clearly an American one. Apparently it was intended for Costner to use an English accent while filming the movie, and Costner tried really hard but just couldn't pull it off, and it just didn't sound right, till director Kevin Reynolds told Costner to just play the part with his normal accent as is. But I swear, there are some parts of the movie where you can hear Costner trying to use a British accent, which I guess was from the early days of filming when Costner was trying to sound more English. When you watch the film next, listen carefully, I swear there are the odd moments where his voice changes. Oh well, at the end of the day, nothing can be worse than Mick Jagger's bizarre Australian accent he delivered in the Ned Kelly movie. Number 6. Rating controversy. For its UK release, the production company were keen to get a PG rating, as PG ratings usually meant more people will be attending cinema screenings, as well as reaching the child market. However, the original cut of the movie was actually pretty damn violent, so in order to get a softer rating, cuts and edits had to be made, in which it finally got that PG rating the production wanted. However, despite the cuts, there were still complaints over the movie's use of violence, especially from parent groups. I guess you can't blame people, as the movie can be pretty brutal. I mean, the movie literally starts off with people getting their hands chopped off. Personally, the movie's grim violence actually never really bothered me as a kid. I loved it, and I don't think it's any worse than, say, the Joker sadistically killing people in Tim Burton's Batman, or the melting Nazis in Raiders of the Lost Ark, or even the exploding gremlin in Gremlins. The only thing that bothered me in Robin Hood Prince of Thieves was the witch. That character terrified me, and I just found her to be disgusting. And I just found the grotesqueness of her scenes to be unnecessary, as well as not fitting in with the rest of the movie. Just as with the UK, when released here in Australia, the movie was given a PG rating, but as time went on, it did eventually move on to an M15 rating. And over the years, there have even been several different versions of Robin Hood Prince of Thieves released, with some of the scenes that were taken out fully restored back into the film. Number 5. The music of Robin Hood. The music of Robin Hood Prince of Thieves was scored by movie legend Michael Kamen. Kamen's career as a movie composer was booming at the time, having scored Lethal Weapon, Die Hard, Roadhouse and License to Kill, and his score for Robin Hood Prince of Thieves is definitely a highlight of the movie. It sounds adventurous and swashbuckling, as well as having heart and spirit. It captures the adventure and mythology of Robin Hood and gets you excited for the movie, and it's definitely one of the grander and most epic scores he ever composed. To tie in with the movie, a single by Bryan Adams, which was actually co-written by Kamen, called Everything I Do It For You was released, and the song was huge for its time, with it being number 1 on the charts for 16 weeks. I swear that song was as huge, if not bigger, than Robin Hood Prince of Thieves itself. Everything I Do It For You was actually my introduction to Bryan Adams, just like how Robin Hood Prince of Thieves was my introduction to Robin Hood. And I swear, at one stage in 1991, you couldn't go anywhere without hearing this song. Number 4. Video game. So as part of merchandising for Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, Virgin Games released a Nintendo and Game Boy game based off the movie. And for a start, what's with the cover? At first glance, I wouldn't even think this was a Robin Hood Prince of Thieves game. It just doesn't capture the look of the movie, or even look like an exciting video game for that matter. I mean, couldn't they have actually used the movie's poster as the cover art? The game did, however, feature on the cover of Nintendo Power, so it was pretty big for its time. So the game is pretty basic. You're Robin Hood walking around killing bad guys in all sorts of locations seen from the film, like Sherwood Forest. And what's interesting is when you kill enemies with your weapons, they explode into bones. Yeah, imagine that happening in the film. Good luck with that PG rating. The game's perspective changes from an above-head view to a side-scroller. And I think that when the game is on side-scroller mode is where the game's graphics really shine. For the time it was made in, of course. But I must say, the likenesses are pretty weird too. I mean, look at Robin Hood here. He honestly looks like a hybrid mishmash of Vigo the Carpathian and Bruce Campbell. But all in all, from memory playing this game, it was pretty enjoyable. Although I would often get to a point where I would start to get frustrated with it and stop playing. Number 3, the Kenner Toys. The toy company Kenner has been making action figures based off popular movies ever since the 70s, when they released their Star Wars action figure lineup, and had since done action figures for DC superheroes, the real Ghostbusters, Terminator 2, Judgment Day, and the 1989 Batman movie, among many others. So it only seemed fitting that they should release the action figure lineup for Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. And damn, as a kid I loved these figures. It was just great to have an action figure of Robin Hood, and the Kevin Costner likeness was top notch, although I never knew why he had the letter C on his belt. When I was a kid I always assumed that it was C for Costner, you know, a sort of in-joke. However, the Robin Hood Prince of Thieves lineup would go on to be somewhat controversial, as it was discovered that a great deal of the lineup was just remolds of pre-existing toys. For example, the Robin Hood figure was made from the same body molds as the Green Arrow from the Superpowers lineup, and the Friar Tuck figure was made from the same mold as one of Jabba the Hutt's guards from Return of the Jedi. And the Sherwood Forest playset was basically the Ewok Endor playset repackaged. Yeah, that's a little bit naughty, but either way, the toys were still awesome back in the day. Number 2, rival Robin Hood movie. Thanks to all the hype and buzz surrounding Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, many people forget there was actually another Robin Hood movie which came out in 1991, simply called Robin Hood. Unlike Prince of Thieves, this Robin Hood film was actually a British production, and stars Sleeping with the Enemy star Patrick Bergin as Robin Hood and Uma Thurman as Maid Marian. And yes, you heard that correctly, Uma Thurman. Apparently, when this version of Robin Hood was in production, Kevin Costner was offered the role, but he chose to star in Prince of Thieves instead. Some people argue that this version of Robin Hood is better, as it's more true to the Robin Hood legend and feels less Hollywoodized. Robin Hood actually came out 1 month before Prince of Thieves did, but that didn't help it, probably thanks to the anticipation growing for watching the Kevin Costner one, and it even skipped cinemas entirely in the US, as it became a straight-to-TV movie for the Fox network. Well, it's quite confusing when you think about it. 2 Robin Hood movies coming out at the same time? However, Prince of Thieves was so impossibly popular, the other Robin Hood never stood a chance, which brings me to my next point. Number 1, second highest grossing movie of 1991. Upon its release in 1991, Robin Hood Prince of Thieves became the second highest grossing movie of that year, only beaten by Terminator 2 Judgment Day, making $390.5 million at the box office on a $48 million budget. I can actually remember Robin Hood Prince of Thieves quite clearly when it came out, and it was huge! Everyone was talking about Robin Hood, and the fictional character was everywhere. I guess you could say that Robin Hood was to 1991 what Batman was to 1989, or what dinosaurs would be to 1993. Even Bryan Adams' song Everything I Do It For You was crazy popular back in 1991, and was nominated for an Academy Award and won a Grammy, and still to this day is considered a popular love ballad. Alan Rickman received a BAFTA for his devilishly enjoyable performance of the Sheriff of Nottingham. However, not all reception of Robin Hood Prince of Thieves was met with glorious praise, as Kevin Costner's portrayal of the character was met with criticism, and he was even nominated for a Razzie for his performance. Once again, going by memory, a big issue many people had with him was his British accent, or rather lack of, as he spends most of the movie talking with his American accent. So what do I think of his performance? Well, I agree that Alan Rickman does steal the show, but Costner still does a good job. He's enjoyable and swashbuckling, and you do want to see him save the day. The best way to go into the film is to not expect to see a serious or realistic take on the Robin Hood legend, but a modern Hollywoodized version, with an American Robin Hood. But if you can get past that, you'll see it is a very enjoyable movie. So that was my look into Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, a movie that everyone was watching in 1991 when they weren't watching Terminator 2. To me, the film is a bit of a guilty pleasure, but it's still a film that I get loads of fun from, even now when I watch it as an adult. So if you want a fun, easygoing adventure movie and aren't too much of a stickler for historical accuracies and just willing to observe it as being just a movie, then you will get enjoyment from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Anyway, I'm Minty, and at least I didn't use a spoon. See ya! I've got an itchy hand, which I'm scratching. Scratchy, scratchy, scratcharoos.